So, hi everyone, I'm Rufina and this is Renita. And today we'll talk about our project, Communication in Cars, looking at intelligibility and listening effort. So, the environment in cars makes it naturally difficult for us to engage in verbal communication. So, we experience masking from wind noise, engine noise, and road noise. Also, there's a problem of limited visual cues, especially for the driver who can't turn around to look at the person they're talking to. So that makes it a little bit more difficult to understand speech. We also have to think about our body positioning in the car. If you have a hearing impairment, then your better ear may be away from the person you're talking to. So that further complicates the problem of verbal communication. Older adults sometimes complain that they have difficulties communicating in vehicles because the speech is somewhat unclear, and sometimes when they do think they've understood what was said, their response make it very obvious that they misunderstood something. So some have developed some coping mechanisms, including remaining silent and just excluding themselves from the conversation. So we have more and more older drivers on the road, and we don't want them to be excluded from conversations in a vehicle with family or with friends. So that's our main reason for approaching this topic. And we don't want people to be basically we don't want people to feel excluded. So some of these older drivers, they have adapted this thing where they don't want to drive alone. They'll always drive with a partner so that the partner could handle the navigation and they could focus just on driving. Focusing just on driving also means not participating in conversation. So we're just trying to get more information on that. So the problems with communication difficulties in cars have not been well documented to date. And there are studies which look at accident rates of drivers with hearing impairments, but these studies do not give insight as to the underlying problems. Okay, so our objectives for our project are to quantify speech intelligibility in vehicles. For now, we're only looking at hearing and listening tasks. To evaluate intelligibility in several listening conditions where the driver is the listener and 3 other passenger positions represent talker positions. We're looking at different speeds and road surfaces. We also want to simulate the in-vehicle environment over earphones in the lab, and to compare the simulated environment with the real environment, to compare the results we get when we perform our tests in the simulated environment and the real vehicle environment.
So to quantify speech intelligibility, we use 3 tests. The first one is the hearing and noise test, or commonly abbreviated as the HINT. And the second one is the distinctive feature difference test. And the third one is the subjective listening effort rating scale. So the hearing in noise test is a sentence recognition task. So what it measures is the signal to noise ratio, which gives you a certain percentage of speech intelligibility. And we refer this as speech reception threshold. And the stimuli that we use are 20 short sentences, such as the boy fell from the window, a match fell on the floor. And the task for the listener is to repeat the sentences that they just heard. And the variations that are allowed are shown in the brackets. And the signal to noise ratio is adjusted adaptively according to the 1 up and 1 down rule, which corresponds to the 50% of speech intelligibility. And the benefit of the hearing in noise test is, first, in contrast with the DFT test, it doesn't have ceiling or floor effects, and it's also quite sensitive to the signal to noise ratio. However, for this test, it doesn't allow us to have a manual scoring for the test sentences, and it also doesn't give us any information about what speech informations that are missed by the listener. The DFT test is a consonant recognition task. It measures the percentage of the correct consonant recognition at a fixed signal to noise ratio level. And the stimuli we use are 21 Canadian consonants presented in a consonantal context, such as a fill, a till, a bill. And the task for the listener is to choose the consonant that they just heard. We use 2 female speakers, which in total gives 42 consonants per condition. So the benefit of the DFT test is, first, it gives some idea about what type of confusions that the listeners make. And also it allows us to have an automatic testing procedure. However, the limitation is that it's prone to a ceiling or floor effects. That is, if we present the test at a signal-to-noise ratio that is too easy, then we'll have like close to 100% performance. While if we present the conditions, the test at a signal-to-noise ratio that is too low, then we'll have a chance performance. So in these cases, we don't get any information, and we cannot compare the performances of the listeners in different listening conditions. So this is just the snapshot of the touch screen that we use for the DFT test. And this is the listening effort rating scale that we use for our test. This is adapted after a 4-point rating scale published by Sato, Bradley, and Morimoto in 2005. So instead of using 4-point choices, we expanded into 10-point scales. But when we do the analysis, we collapse the responses into a 4-point scales corresponding to the text shown in the figure.
Okay, so in our experiments, the listening conditions that we're looking at, in total we have 12. So there are 3 talker positions: the front passenger, the left rear passenger, and the right rear passenger. So we're looking at 2 road conditions: smooth road and rough road, at 50 kilometers per hour and 100 kilometers. For all the experiments, all the windows were closed, all the vents were closed, radio was off, and only the talker and listener were in the car at any given time. And we used the Toyota Corolla 2009. Okay, so we had 10 subjects, and they're all between the ages of 18 and 35, all with normal hearing, and the test orders were randomized between participants. So that's what the setup looks like. The car is in an anechoic chamber, running on a dynamometer, which is like a treadmill for cars. The listener is inside the car, and there's also a HATS inside the car acting as the talker. So that's what the smooth road surface looks like, and that's the rough road surface. And basically that's where the participants sit. So we have the human person sitting right there. There's a microphone for talkback for when they have to repeat the hint sentences. There's a touch screen for when they have to make their consonant selection for the DFT test. Right. So imagine that the person sitting in the driver position is the human being. That's the hats that represent the talker. It's moved between 3 passenger positions, 1 in the front and 2 at the back. Okay.
So another one of our objectives is to stimulate the vehicle environment through earphones. And our collaborators from the University of Windsor obtained the car noise recordings and also the impulse response data. What impulse response is basically is simulating the talker to listener's acoustic path. And the noise and impulse responses were recorded binaurally using the head and torso stimulator, which that is located in the driver's seat. And all the experimental conditions that we tested in the real vehicle test is going to also be tested in the simulator setup. So with the provided data, we can generate the sounds arriving at the listener's ears, and we will have the same subjects participating in our real vehicle test to participate in the simulator test. And if the performance in the simulator test is similar to what we had in the real vehicle test, then we can assume that this model can closely reproduce the real vehicle environment. So if successful, this will give us flexibility for later testing, such as using different stimuli. We can also test other populations and also adding cognitive loading tasks. So this all we have for now, and the results will be available after we have completed our task in the simulated environment. Thank you for listening, and we invite those of you who are interested to chat with us during the break. Thank you.